Boom. There it is. We've got it, Angelo. The red dot's up there. We're live. And this is the Fall Line with KS and Company. I'm Dave Capron. I'm here with my partner, Angelo Ross. Hey, Angelo.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, we're here. And I want to let everybody know out there that hopefully they'll help out some of our sponsors. The sponsors are doing a great job this year. We have Technical Blizzard as our sponsor and friends of the podcast. We also have Nick's Boot Fitting over in Vermont near Mount Snow in West Dover that is a sponsor of the podcast. So it's always great to help those guys out because they're helping us out to keep this going. And we have an amazing coach tonight. We're so psyched. Angela and I are honored to have Dave Wenn on the podcast tonight. 50 years in the PSIA organization and has both been in the race world and is still in the race world with NICEF in New York and here with PSIA with us in the East. Welcome to be with us here, Dave. Thanks.
Well, thanks, David. Thanks, Angelo. It's I look at it as a privilege to be able to address and be part of this thing that you guys are doing, which I think is really cool. And I'm humbled and I'm honored, quite honestly.
Yeah. So you're out in your boat shop right now, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like to hear a lot of ski talk. So. Yeah, this is where I do my work out here. See, I'll show you. That's one of the projects I'm working on right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a 1936 Garwood, and the owner wants a complete, authentic restoration. So that's what we're doing. It'll take about 500-600 hours, and probably take me into August.
Wow!
So that's amazing.
And I have multiple projects like that.
Jeez, that's pretty much artist work right there, Angelo.
Thank God, ski season. Well, there's a fine line between artwork and being functional.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to take it too far into the artwork, or the guy will kind of be unhappy with the bill.
Yeah. God. So, hey, as we start the pod, you got something, Angelo? I'm sorry.
I couldn't tell for a minute there if he was talking about skiing or working on boats, because it's a fine line between science and artwork on the ski hill too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Angelo. And I hope that we're all trying to go to the art side of skiing to be good, to be really good.
Hear, hear.
And how did it start for you? You know, thinking about the art and the science, and all the times I've had to be able to go skiing with you, we're so much into the ski talk and kind of that moment. I mean, I don't even know when you started, how young, where in the country, who taught you. I mean, how did the beginnings of Dave Wenn the skier start?
Listen, you're asking me to go back a long way, and I have a hard time remembering what I did yesterday. So let's try this. High school ski club, jumped in the bus, went to Greek Peak, took a few lessons at Greek Peak, had a really good friend that was an excellent skier. I figured he's the one I should hang on with. So in those early moments during the high school years, I did a lot of lifting and shifting, pivoting, sliding, skidding, jumping to get around the corner. And eventually I picked up on what my friend was doing, and we started to ski pretty good, pretty competently at Greek Peak. And that's when I said, his name was John Casella. I said, Johnny, let's join the ski school, see what happens. So we joined the ski school, and luckily the Greek Peak Ski School was at that time, and it probably still was a very serious, professional, international ski school led by a guy that was a perfectionist, Gordy Richardson. And there was a lot of us that came out of there. I can think of Terry Barber, Mick O'Gara, Liz Starr. I think Tom Butler was out of there, and I'm probably missing a few when I say that. So we were told that if you go to certification, you will not fail, but you couldn't go unless you were going to pass. So five of us went to, in 1968, went to Holiday Valley for our certification process. And, at that point, it was intimidating. Examiners were very intimidating. They were Europeans, they were Canadians. There was, it was Cal Cantrell and Otto Fry and, Ray Allard. It was a serious group of people. And we had to do it in the first day was in December, a foot of wet snow. So that was to do side slips and traverses in wet snow, heavy wet snow was a challenge. But we all passed. 5 of us passed, which was pretty cool. So from there, it started to evolve. And Greek Peak at the time also had a really good ski racing program, a good junior race program. Had a Canadian coach there by the name of Mike Annette. And as I started to watch what they were doing, I'm saying, there's something different going on here in terms of a technical development, technical understanding. And I just said to him, hey, can you put me on your staff? And sure enough, not having a clue of what I'm doing, but paying attention to what's really going on. And as I continued to evolve in the program with it, I finally became the head coach of the Greek Peak Ski Club. Ran that for a number of years. 1972, went to Lake Placid, started me. And I actually ran that sports academy for 35 years. And finally retired. Ski coaching, teaching skiing, and working on wooden boats. So that's the history. But along the way, there's been I've seen a tremendous amount of changes in equipment and technique and the philosophy of PSIA and what we think about, what's important. So it's been a very, very exciting and educational journey for sure. I'm grateful that I've had that chance and pretty proud that I've stuck with it and learned a lot and made a lot of friends and helped a lot of people be better skiers. So anyway, rambling, sorry.
No, that's good. Cause those are the things we haven't heard at dinner. We get out there and we start talking about, what the snow is like and how we were skiing and what we were doing, what we were working on. And we kind of don't always get into those early days and what was going on. But
can I just, let me just say that it's inspirational to hear people maybe I take inspiration from it because this was my story too, who got involved through high school ski club. Yeah. Because when you get in that room, when we get in that room at examiner training, there's a lot of pedigrees in there. There are a lot of people with a lot of family history who were, out of the womb on a pair of skis. That wasn't my story. That always gives me I always have a little bit of imposter syndrome around you all, but here's Dave Wenn, who also got started in a high school ski club. And that's inspirational. And I think, people like hearing that stuff.
It was intimidating too, because I wasn't very good. I really wasn't very good at all. But, passion drives a lot of learning.
Yeah. And how did you have the two worlds, here in the U.S., our race world, our USSS and PSIA, ASI kind of don't have a lot of collaboration, especially at times none. How did you coexist and how did that work for you through so many years?
Well, I guess that's a good question because it's going back that far. I don't quite remember the sequence. I just know I stayed actively involved in PSIA. Probably didn't do a lot of events and went to my workshops and went to my updates and so on. But I really focused on being a ski coach. I wanted to be a ski coach. I got my level 100, my level 200, and finally got a level 300 and just lived in that environment. That was the environment that really intrigued me. But I always sort of stayed close to PSIA, but I didn't until the development team tryouts came to Whiteface. So I got into it, had a tryout. I was number 10 of 10. Ray Allard was one of the examiners and told me at the end, he says, Dave, he says, you really don't know what's going on in this organization, do you? But it's a good thing you know how to ski. So we'll put you in as number 10 guy and see what happens. And that that opened up a whole world. That opened up the whole new world of education and learning that. And I think that I just had in April, we had a pretty good breakthrough for our organization with U.S. Ski Team Development Program, because camp for U16s at Sugarloaf, Maine, and they had a women's camp and a men's camp. And the first 2 days of the camp, the groups were led by PSIA examiners. So I went up for the men's and myself, and we took out 2 groups each day for 2 days and took these kids, these 16 boys, skiing, free skiing and skiing development on GS skis. Coach tagged along, and I was pretty nervous. I was pretty nervous about how we were going to be accepted, because all along the way through this, I've always felt that we have been sort of underdogs in their opinion in certain places. But on the other hand, a lot of examiners have also helped coach the ski team in their development phase. Sean Smith was an example of that, who went and did a lot of camps for the U.S. ski team. So there was certainly some good connection, but I don't think in a broad scope, we had a good connection. So we had 2 days at Sugarloaf. There was no bottom to the snow. The boys were on their 27-meter GS skis, and they pattern on a GS ski, and that's roll it up at the top of the turn, bring it down the hill on it, bring it do that on soft, wet, heavy snow. You lay it up too much on edge, and the next thing you know, you're heading right to the woods. And that happened a lot. So we skied I skied with the boys in my group the first morning for a run and a half. And we did circle skiing, and I watched them ski, and it was like, I could tell they were just hating this experience. And sure enough, when I got them all together, I said, "So how's this all working for you?" They dropped their heads, and nobody had anything enthusiastic to say about it all, because they had no versatility in their skiing. They had no way to make a transition. They didn't understand about coming into the turn on a little flatter ski, feathering it in that heavy snow, getting it set up, rolling it on the edge. And by the time the morning was done, the boys started to ski a lot different in that kind of snow on those skis. And those skis are really hard. They're no fun to ski on, quite honestly, I don't think. I mean, you need firm snow. We at Whiteface don't really encourage a lot of GS free skiing unless they're in a controlled netted environment, because of the opportunity for some false cutting and overbalancing. And those kids at that speed, Whiteface is pretty narrow and pretty steep. So you can, if you lock on an edge in the wrong place in the back seat, you're in the trees, because we look at it as kind of dangerous in some ways. And then they can really explore, and we don't have to worry about it. We have a movement pattern that works on a slalom ski, but it doesn't work that way on a GS ski. You can't be quite as aggressive inside. The ski doesn't work as easy for you as a GS ski would work. So in the end, from what you're asking about the collaboration, I think we made a big inroad with the U.S. ski team. Sam Damon, who's the Eastern regional coach, was pretty pleased with the outcome. I know that talking to the guys that were with me, it was a positive outcome. They had the kids bought in. We did a lot of different skiing. We skied all kinds of different stuff. And we also realized that it's okay to come up and out of the snow a little bit. It's okay to do a real high intensity leaper. And we did a lot of leapers to clear the ski from the snow, get experience. So I think we made some inroads, and I hope we can continue to do that. And that our impression to them and to those coaches was a positive one. So it's that was great. That was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I asked that because for me, I mean, a lot of the improvements I've had in my skiing has been from things like the Dave Gregory peak performance race camps that a bunch of us did back in the mid 2000s and early 2000s. And it always seems like when we put the panels or put some gates out there in front of us, we're forced to do things that we can get away with and not have to do when there's nothing in front of us telling us where we have to turn.
Accuracy. You have to be accurate. You have to have good movements. And, that's the world I come from is just that, David. it's all about performance. I've witnessed a lot of good skiing throughout these years. So that's probably my narrow-mindedness about skiing a little bit, where I get into a little bit of trouble, is because of what I've learned from my environment about performance skiing, high energy skiing, dynamic skiing, carved skiing, fast skiing, quick skiing, so and when you're coaching kids, you kind of have to be able to walk the walk, a little bit. So you have to be able to at least show those kids that you know how to ski. And through that, I've had a chance my skiing's evolved that way. But I think in lots of ways, my skiing becomes a little bit single dimension too. Yeah.
And one of the things that you've done a lot of, which I think is cool, and this kind of goes, I know Angela will have some follow-ups on this, is you've scored the national team tryout a couple of times or more than that. And, that gets into a lot of off-piste skiing, still good skiing, but it's not that hard, firm, fast all the time, that environment you're usually coaching in. And that doesn't seem to be a problem at all for you to find good skiing and see good movements. How do you view those two, and how do they fit together, that off-piste good skiing and the race world?
Well, I kind of go back to what I would the number one fundamental I go to that I think, and my disclaimer here is that there's nothing I say is fact. It's opinion. It's what I think. So that you can take that or leave it, and don't take it to the bank. So my number one fundamental go-to is the relationship of center mass to base of support. And if you set that up correctly in the transition phase or the edge release phase, I think you gain access to the other fundamentals that apply. Meaning you have to have finesse at that transition. I've also learned too about the value of using a flat ski, how a flat ski works in transition. So I think that between off-piste and firm skiing, it's that finesse of setting yourself up so you're moving in a way that's forward through the ski slightly to the inside of the ski with a little bit of early inclination to find your base, to find your platform to move through. I talk to the kids about how to release the ski to flat, roll to an edge, so that they don't eliminate that middle edge transition phase, I call it. We have transition from turn to turn, but then I also break it down into an edge transition where you release the edge, run a flat ski, and go to an edge. Because at any time in an edge change, the ski will be flat on the snow. And what you do with that is real important in terms of how you feather into the next turn, how aggressive you are to the next turn, how you float into the next turn on that flatter base. And I think it sets it up pretty nice. I learned a lot when I was coaching at Vail, because I did a lot of off-piste stuff. I did a lot of back bowl skiing, and that was a big experience for me, never having done that. So I put myself in situations that I felt totally uncomfortable with. The widest ski I skied on was a Dina Star 72 underfoot, never anything wider. I figured that if I changed my stance if I narrow up my stance now, I've got 140 underfoot. Who needs more than that? So I learned how to feel through that stuff. I learned how to breathe in powder. I learned, it's just a great experience, and then, I was in the race world there as well. And so, and I really tried to work on the culture there too, in terms about the benefit of off-piste skiing, because I knew that I needed that. So I wanted the athletes I worked with to experience that as well. So I'm not sure that answered your question. Again, I kind of get on these rambling modes, and
I love the rambling modes, and I know Angela's smiling, so he has something to ask. I know it.
I I just love that all these conversations that we have with everybody we respect all go toward versatility and shaking it up and making yourself uncomfortable. And that just seems to be a trend. And so it's real easy. It's super easy to get like uber focused on one thing. It's super easy to get unidirectional. But the theme that has developed on this show for the last season and a half is all about versatility. How many situations can you put yourself in and make yourself uncomfortable, and then make connections among these various experiences? And that's how you learn it. And it's great to hear the reinforcement.
And having the courage to step out of your comfort zone, to challenge yourself over that pitch that you don't know. And that takes, that's where learning happens. That's where learning comes in, because I admire some of the people in our BOE. I watch Terry Barber ski down through bumps. It's like, holy shit, how does he do that? How does he do it? Make it look so easy. And I do it, and I struggle and scramble all over the place. So, there's some good skiing going on in our organization for sure. So those are you learn from watching them.
Well, if we're going to talk to Coach Wenn, we've got to talk about equipment. And I definitely a few years ago was looking at my pole length and was nervous to go shorter because everybody around on the staff would be going, "Why are your poles so short?" And then I started looking around at some of the gang like Jebs and Matts and Brian Smith, and they were on the team, the Alpine team, and I'm like, their poles look short, and they were. And then you've been doing a little research, I know, on pole length and playing around. Can you describe that a little bit to the listeners?
Yeah, well, I've been doing a lot of research on that. And I think when you think about equipment, I think about the things that have had the greatest impact on my skiing. And I think it was, I don't know, to pick a number, 25, 30 years ago, I put my foot in a Lang boot. Never felt more balanced in my life, never felt more flex in the ankle, just felt like totally centered on my skis. And I went along and I skied like that. I went to Europe with some athletes. Free skiing, I put my poles out there while I went up and set a course and stuff. Somebody stole my ski poles. I grabbed one of the athletes' ski poles and they were full 5 centimeters shorter than mine. The first 3 turns, I said, wow, this is different. And I never looked back, and I've never skied as balanced as that point. So I'm looking at 2 things of equipment in my career that's made any impact: boots, and people laugh at it, ski poles. I figure if I keep my skis tuned, you keep them tuned and it works. But to me, the ski pole allows, if it's a benchmark height, and I go with this benchmark height, and you can change that however you want to do it, but the benchmark height to me, through research and through my return to ski program with the athletes I work with, all the kids that I do in the return to ski program, I immediately shorten their poles down to 66% of their body height. They struggle with it a little bit. Then all of a sudden they light up and they ski wings. They move into the turn. They have a good athletic stance. They're not getting pole rebound that's kicking them back in the back seat. It just seems to keep them moving in a good direction, flowing forward into the inside of the new turn. And when that hand swings through, you flow with it and move into the next turn. A light pole touch, and that's really all it is. It's a pole touch and a swing to help release, and then you're into the next turn. That's how I've been able to portray it, forms where I can actually talk about it and give some description and give a little bit of background. But those that are willing to try have come back to me and said, "Boy, that seems to make a difference." Now, again, it's a benchmark length. I think that I use it through this year. I'm going to be working a lot more with U10s and 12s as the program director for U10s and 12s at Whiteface. We will make sure that those kids have a pole length that's appropriate to their height. Nothing long, nothing you're going to grow into. You don't grow into your boots. You don't grow into your ski length. We're not going to grow into our ski poles. We're going to have it right, so it works. But I think those that have been willing to try, have found it positive. Now, on the GS aspect, kids tend to ski a little bit longer pole anyway because the pole swing is not as evident or as necessary. It's a swing, it's a balance. And I sure don't want them playing their pole in GS. So I only am concerned with the pole length in slalom and for free skiing. And even in slalom, up for debate, but the gate is cleared mid-shaft. So again, you're to the next turn. So therefore the pole is right there, eye height, click, move on to the next turn, and the pole swings forward. People will say to me, well, you got to get out of the start. I go, yeah, well, you got to get out of the start, but you got to make 40 good turns after that. So what's important? And again, and once you become a U19, I think sometimes think our work is done a little bit at that point, because it all's got to happen at the development age, U10, 12, U14 age, even at the U16 age. I think we got to continue to hold a strong culture for skiing development, learning to be a good skier, and keep that in mind, and keep a good blend of good free skiing, off-piste free skiing, directed technical free skiing, and so on. I think those are pretty critical components of development.
Angelo, I remember I sent you a text a little while ago when you went to Big Snow skiing. What was it?
Oh my God, you're coming at me about my pole length. Half a turn and I was panning across. It wasn't even focused on me, and my poles were the right length, by the way. 66% of my height.
I was just checking.
Because I listen to Coach. Let me ask a different question. Go down a different road here for a minute, because you were talking early on about your first examiners, Dave, and it was a serious group, and I'm curious. And then a little bit after that, you mentioned you've seen a lot of change, and I know teaching styles have changed. I know coaching styles have changed over the years, and I'm just curious on your take on how teaching and coaching styles have changed.
I'm going to say that maybe the customer service stuff comes because the instructor maybe doesn't have enough command of content to be able to interject the content in the people side of it to produce some kind of result. So they just go out to be a nice guy, nice lady with them. I don't know. But what I've witnessed though in stuff currently, because I do exams and I do watch people out there at even ETS or Eastern team or development team and even exams, is that the inexperienced, and it's expected that the inexperienced person at this point doesn't have enough command of content to be able to truly interact on the people side, build the trust, build the encouragement, do the motivation, do all the things that are important for somebody to really learn. And when and because I see that in exams, is that when they're in the teaching segment, they rush to figure out, what are we going to do next on the snow? What's the next sequence? What's the next maneuver? What's the next thing I want, piece of progression? Because they don't really know where they're going, because they don't have command of content. They're in the associative phase. In order to be a good teacher, to really teach people, you have to be in the autonomous phase of technical. It's my belief. And I think that only comes through experience, through your own personal training, and how well you understand skiing, understand how you can take one simple move that they do and build on that without getting off into out of the box sort of stuff. because you want them to have some progress, and you got to give them simple bites. So when you have command of content, I think you'll be a really good teacher. Until then, I think you will struggle on the people skill because you're trying to figure out what to do next on the hill. If that makes any sense and helps you try to understand your question all in terms of styles, I don't know. I mean, I do remember early on when I was a younger teacher, it was pretty much about technical maneuvers. Maybe I didn't really care if they had a good time or not. I wanted to make sure they could do a wedge turn or a stem turn or side slip. I didn't care if they were scared or not. But now that all changes. That's all changing as we look at the learning connection in those three components. So what do we value as most important? Dave, what do you value as most important? What do you value, Angelo, as most important? What do I value as most important? Right now, I value people skills because I feel I have enough command of content that I can teach it. I need to engage that person. So when they walk away, they feel like they had a good lesson. They're a little bit better skier. They've made some progress. They still have the passion for the sport, and they're not scared to death, and they'll come back. That, to me, is the easy side, the technical side. So really in the people skills, that's almost associative because I don't really know those people yet. I don't know what's going to make that man or lady come together and make it work. So I can't be focused on the technical. I got to have that in my bag of tricks. So it's kind of my rambling on that. I do get going. So
I think it's a terrific answer. So if you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you have somebody who's maybe working on a level 2 exam, do you think what I'm hearing is, I think you think it's really important for them to focus on the content, on the technical pieces.
Yeah, I do. I really do. Because I see people coming to exams ill-prepared, missing a movement pattern, like they haven't gotten the message on what we're expecting in the assessment activities on terrain that I call centerline terrain. Most of that terrain is groomed blue black. We do most of it there. That's the center line of our stuff. And I always ask them, how much have you trained? Who have you trained with? How much are you prepared? And I don't get a lot of clarity. I think more people come more for the experience, and they're not truly prepared. I don't see a lot of current movement patterns. I see a lot of, I see things that by now should have been trained out of them in terms of how they set up a turn, how they roll the ski up on edge, how they steer on a low edge angle coming into the turn, how they get that tool that's designed to really help them come around the corner. How do they get that set up? I don't see that happening. So I still think what's our message? What are we getting across? What are we really looking for in those assessment criteria in terms of a current movement pattern? Because I still think I see a lot of old school kind of stuff, not bad school, old school. All the ways we've learned to ski are still important. They all have places. They all have a place in the lateral side of the learning phase. But centerline skiing for us right now are those assessment activities. So how we accurately set those up and get those people trained is a question I have. So.
And I don't think the focus on content early on is unique to ski teaching or ski coaching either. I remember when I taught high school, all new teachers say I was always one day ahead of the kids. It was all about content. And I remember joking with somebody, it was maybe my fourth or fifth year in the classroom. And it's a point in your career as a school teacher, well, for me anyway, where I exhaled a little bit. I could relax a little bit in my room. And I joked that it wasn't until the fourth year I realized there were kids in the room. I was so worried about content and dealing with the biology that I didn't even begin to think about addressing the individuals in the room. And that's a truism of teachers.
Right. But in time, Angelo, you grabbed command of the content.
Yes.
And you probably became a better teacher.
Much better.
And had better relationships with the kids.
Yes. But it took time.
So you've got to get that first. You got to get, that's the foundation of our sport, is being able to be a good skier and understanding how and why you are a good skier. And you've got to work on your skiing, for Christ's sake. You got to work on your skiing. You got to make every turn count, every turn with intention, every turn with focus. I don't make a turn that I don't have some assessment of it, because I'm so anal about understanding what I'm doing. Anyway.
I remember going to the ETS tryout, and everybody was like, "Oh man, if Dave wins there, he's gonna say, 'Let me see the bottom of your ski.'" I remember, damn it, it was Dave and Murmur, and we're standing at the bottom of the hill, and he's like, "Hey, lift your skis up." Shit, here it comes. But it's true, right? Gear, skis have to be tuned, and you have to know your shit.
It tells me about preparation. You go to, doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. When you talk about equipment, David, I never go out on the hill with an untuned pair of skis. Never. And if I go to an event, I'll take 2 pair, because the second day, if I wore out the first day, I have a fresh pair for the second day. It's just that's the professional side. It's what's important. Right.
Yeah. It's hard for us. I know for Troy and I, we get in the car and there's never just one pair of skis. The only time I think there was one pair of skis is when we put 5 of us in one vehicle and we got to go down for a week down south. And it's because we can't fit everything in the car. But there's always has to be at least 2 pairs of skis, just for that reason.
Oh, yeah. That's well, I think those are our tools. Those are our tools that we use, which could bring me into another topic, but
what is it? What's the other topic? We want to hear it.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'll try to put this in a positive statement. I'm pleased to see currently more of our BOE on a more performance ski. I'm starting to see it coming around a little bit. I think we went through a phase of an all mountain, wide underfoot kind of ski, and I have a hard time believing that people say, "Oh, they ski great performance stuff," but I'm not convinced. I think that a performance ski in the East on hard surface is what helps you grow your skiing. You have to keep up with your equipment. You get into a performance ski that's got a little life, got a little reaction. You have to come to grips with that. You have to adjust your skiing to that. And I think you become a more accurate, a quicker skier. I think you become more dynamic. And I think that's the performance side of the culture we need to portray. And it can come with equipment, and making sure your equipment is right for the snow. So I'm seeing more of it. I'll put it that way. I'd like to see more people on a slalom ski, but that's an opinion. Just because I think it generates energy. It's harder to, it brings life to the sport. To me, it brings life to your feet. It makes you jump on it and go, so
it's like doing those tricks on the skateboard.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It brings life to your feet or breaks your toes. So, hey, Coach, if somebody shows up at an event, not even necessarily certification, and they're very, very skilled skier, but more of a park type skier, more of a skiddy turns. When you're watching that performance, what is it about a park kid or something that you can appreciate when it's a really good skier?
It's the same thing I would in a regular Alpine person: speed control, balance, versatility, some shaping. I mean, all the skis will shape a turn. All of them can shape something. You can steer every ski into a turn. I just, I look for balance, not the sit back, tips up in the air, going crazy. Just good balance, good skiing, good speed control, speed management. Speed management. Sometimes I see those guys just running away. Well, and that might be their style, but I'm not a fan of runaway skiing. I think that shows just, even if you're going to slip around the corner, if you're going to guide around the corner, at least you can maintain some speed and keep the ski turning and steering through the turn. Maintain balance to control the tip, and just be balanced. But when you start to see runaways, they're out of balance. They don't have turn finish, and I've seen it. I've seen quite a bit of that, and that concerns me, that there's something missing in their technique. So, I appreciate good park skiing because it's, that's fun. That's spirited good skiing. And those guys, those kids, they get down the hill and they have a ball. They're doing tricks. I mean, that's really cool stuff. My son was a freestyle skier, so I appreciate it. I mean, I've watched him come off skyward on a pair of I don't know what they are, 88, 92 underfoot Dina stars, made 6 turns down skyward, making super G turns, skiing like it was like you just got it. No big deal. So I said, holy smokes, that's pretty cool. I've also seen, and I remember this story pretty distinctly. There was the Eastern team tryouts at Whiteface. It was the year that Brian Smith took home the gold. We're at the top of Skyward getting ready for their free run. And with the free run went all the way from the top of Skyward down into Niagara. So it was a really long pitch. And we were all spread out on the hill. So I was the top guy. I was the high up. I'm never the top guy. I was up on the higher end of the list. And, by the time they got to me, most of them were out of control. They were just hanging on to try to find some place to manage something, except for Smitty. Came out of there, had a plan, had some patience, got going, got his rhythm in the first 5 or 6 turns with some really good turn completions, and manage that hill so then he could open it up and control it that way. He never got out of control unless he managed his speed. There's a difference between managing your speed and being out of control. That's not bring it through the turn, finish the turn off, which a lot of people just had no respect for the hill. And then we saw it again at another tryout, and I think that might have been Jeb Boyd was there, it was Whiteface. We came down ladies downhill, and the same thing. By the time they got to me, this time I was on the lower part of the hill. By the time they got to me, there was no more turn shape, gone. So what's going on there? What's happening in that world? Why is that going? So why do we lose speed control? Why don't we have respect for that in terms of being able to manage? If you can manage, to me, if you can manage from the fall line to turn completion, that last half of the turn, if you can manage that, you're showing me a lot more technical ability. Because it's easy to get to the fall line, come out of the fall line, release the ski and go. But it takes a little bit more effort to bring it across the hill, activate the inside leg, which is, to me, been I've learning through my own skiing that the edging of the inside foot is a real controlling factor in turn finish and being able to engage that inside ski. So bring it through to the turn completion, bring it across the hill, and then release and go into the next. And now you can manage most anything on the hill. And to me, that's a higher degree of technical ability in terms of being able to do that. So I look at that, and you mentioned some of your questions. What what pisses me off. Well, in this sport, nothing pisses me off because there's nothing to be pissed off about. It's what disappoints me a little bit in certain things, and that might be one of them too. Is that runaway skier, that runaway activity in a free run. You see it a lot.
So at a couple ed staffs ago, I think it was our last ed staff, but it's a couple years ago because we've had COVID and we can't get together. We
haven't done anything.
And I'm pretty disappointed as when people listen to this, they'll start to hear that we were going to have a great week this week. Some of us ed staff are going to Big Snow, and hopefully Big Snow recovers. They had a fire down there, and we were all looking to go skiing down there on Wednesday. But you made some comments at our last ed staff training that talked a lot about, talked to the younger staff in the ed staff room there. It also talked to the older staff, and you were trying to make the emphasis that the old folks in there still have stuff to give, and that the young crew has a lot to give, but we need to learn from each other. And there's a lot more still to give to the younger staff. And I just thought that relates a lot to ski school staff, ski and snowboard schools, kind of like it does in our room. And do you remember those comments you made?
Yeah, I do, because we've all been through being new members in the club, right? We've all been there, and I see this new generation. I see their excitement, the pride in having achieved and making it to our organization. I see that they've worked hard to get there, and as we started out, we look to the veterans, so to speak, to guide us through. Never dared saying anything in any setting, in any meeting, would I ever say anything, because I just figured it's just going to be wrong. And I'm feeling that we need to just embrace them right now. I mean, we have a wealth of knowledge. They want this knowledge, and we have to be in a position to give it to them. It's almost like I'd like to spend more of my time with that group, and nurturing and show them and talk to them about what we think is important. The things that you thought that you looked up to when you joined the organization, David.
Yeah.
And Angela, you looked up to people. I mean, Craig, so we're always looking up to who's going to give us good information. Who do we want to watch ski? Who do we think is a good teacher? Who do we want to ski with? And that's what we need to sort of foster. I mean, got some really good professionals in our organization. And to me, it's a real privilege to be part of that. And I know that they feel that. I see it. I see the activity and their communications on base camp and how they act at training. And, it's refreshing. It's refreshing, but I really want them to be good. I want them to be performance-minded. I want them to work on their skiing. I want them to ski with intention, and I want them to feel confident with themselves, because no matter what, we are always on stage. Troy, who worked really hard and was under a lot of pressure to make that team, He has no idea yet what pressure he's up against coming forward. He's going to be watched with everything he does because of where he is in the profession, and how when he's out in front of people. He's going to be watched for the next 4 years. We are all watched whenever we're out there. And I want everybody to have the confidence, the command of content, to not get wrapped up in figuring out what that's all about, but focus on being that personality out there that motivates, encourages, and helps. And we have to show that to these people. We have to show them how that happens through our own action and our experience and our willingness to build that relationship. Some of them I didn't think when I was young that they wanted to talk to me. He's just coming up through. We don't care about him. But now, at that point, I didn't dare say a word. I never led a group. I didn't dare say a word. Now maybe I find myself speaking too much. So
I definitely have to tell you, I like when you start speaking. I
guess you get to a point where you just don't give a shit anymore. You just gotta say what you think.
Oh man, that's awesome. What do you got left for him, Angela, here before we finish up?
I'm just so glad you wanted to come on, Coach. And
awesome.
your reputation is well deserved. And I have tried to ski behind you, and it is befuddling. But I think the most inspirational thing about you is your high expectations and your complete lack of ego. And I thank you for that, because that's inspirational.
Yes. Yeah. He's speechless.
Well, that's our job. Our job is to aspire to be inspiring. We need to. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing this opportunity. Appreciate it.